All right, I think I'm gonna start. Hey guys, hope everyone have a great day, great week, and we wanted to have a session on esports for a while now. We're finding really good speakers for this, guests for this, and finally have someone who has tons of experience, covers esports regularly, and has also been working in Web3 space for a while. So we have with us Srinivas. Who has over 20 years of experience, and he is uh, I think he's been gaming for over 2 3 decades, I guess. And
Yeah, you can
so
say that. I've been gaming since I was a teenager. So yeah, I still am. I'm
yeah,
40, but I'm still enjoying gaming as much as I did when I was 15. But
yeah. So this is completely from a gamer to a gamer, so it's gonna be fun.
yeah,
Glad
lovely.
you guys joined. So yeah, I think before we get started, Srinivas, could you please talk a little about your background and how you got started in the Web3 space, what you did before, so we all
Sure,
have an understanding?
sure. Why not? Firstly, I'm audible, right? If you guys can hear me, right? Give me a thumbs up if you can clearly hear me. And kindly bear with me. I'm a little bit under the weather, so yeah. First of all, thanks for inviting me on the space today, and thank you everybody for joining in. I'm really glad to be on a Twitter space for. In fact, it's been the longest time that I have actually done one, so I'm so happy to be here. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of facets to my life before I joined the Web3 space, so to speak. But I mean, yeah, long story short, of course, when I started off my career, if you attach it with gaming, I managed a gaming cafe at the age of 19 when I was in college, earned some quick bucks, my pocket allowance, as you would call it. And then, of course, I've done, I sort of failed at engineering, but I was very good at School of Hard Knocks life. So yeah, I dropped out of engineering, started working in the corporates, and spent a decade training people, working doing L&D. If you see my Twitter headline or LinkedIn headline, you'll see L&D. Then you'll see podcasting, you will see esports, and then of course digital marketing. So I've in the past, of course, last decade and a half, I've been a digital marketer with some of the top digital marketing agencies globally now because they're acquired. But by and large, my experience into the Web3 space is an interesting story, actually, and that also has to do with my love for gaming. So actually, if you guys are interested in, considering the Twitter space is conversational and storytelling, let me tell you a story of how I got into the blockchain and crypto space to begin with. Even before Web3 was, a thing or it evolved in the way that we see it today, I've been a follower of blockchain tech since 2017, I think. Yeah, that's when I mean, there was a huge amount of news about Bitcoin growing in value because obviously, right, it's huge. Back then, it was probably $1,000. It touched $1,000, and then when I started following it, it was around 3,000, and Ethereum was around 300. I watched Banking on Bitcoin. I think it's a 2016 film, which wasn't even available on YouTube then. Watched that, got interested into this whole alternative form of currency or decentralization caught my eye. I dabbled at, of course, doing some trades on you name it, all the coins that were available. I dabbled at buying Ripple at 21 cents, Ether at 300, 3,000, sold them, lost them, whatever. Did mustard hoards. Even tried dabbling at ICOs. Now I think STOs have replaced ICOs. But as of back in 2017, I was just an advocate, not so much on social media, within my friends and networks, wherever I could. That in fact got, like my go-to learnings were obviously YouTube. But because I was an early adopter of technology and I was also working in a social media agency in 2010, even working in social media marketing was a pretty new thing, so to speak, and I was fairly new in the ecosystem. I was invited to be a keynote speaker at the blockchain summit at 2018, which was hosted by Unicorn in Bangalore, if I'm not mistaken, at Embassy. So that was my early dabble at crypto blockchain, so to speak. Cut to 2022, 2 years into the pandemic, while I've been binging YouTube a lot and I've always stayed in touch with the crypto and blockchain space, so to speak. Here, the Web3 world was evolving during that period. And, and at the same time, during the pandemic, an FPS game launched called Valorant, which is very much similar to Counter Strike. I don't know how many of you guys are Counter Strike players or have heard of Counter Strike here. Come on, give me a reaction. I think a lot of you guys might know Counter Strike. So Pandemic had an FPS game called Valorant, and that launched. A lot of people were, of course, locked down in their houses. So was I. I binge watched YouTube, watched a ton of tournaments. I watched more of YouTube than OTT platforms like Netflix or Hotstar or whatever there was. And during that time, there was this team called Global Esports, which caught my eye, and they've been performing really well at this game called Valorant. And I started following them, following the founders on Twitter, and doing stuff there. If you see my PFP, it's although I'm not a premium account, but it's a Gamers Guild PFP, which I own. That's the NFT. So yeah, around the same time I was researching NFT, DeFi. I was trying to get my hands on whatever I could afford at that time. Dabbled first with the Polygon network. Obviously, the Zetrons were part of my early collectibles. And because I was researching on all of these things, the fact that our, the company that I followed, or the team that I followed called Global Esports, they also were, starting their own NFT collection called Gamers Guild, and that spiked my attention. It was the time when Web3 was its all-time high, and bored apes were like a big thing. They were in the limelight. Everyone was all gung ho about NFT. You had the Axie Infinity scholarships back then, kids becoming millionaires and kids actually owning homes because of the scholarship money and the revenue they generated through their Axie games. Decentraland was coming up. Snoop Dogg owning a asset or an NFT in Sandbox was a thing. Metaverse was the buzzword even in digital marketing space. So that was the time when I sort of combined my digital marketing knowledge, early adoption in there, and being part of this NFT launch that happened called Gamers Guild. And I used to be very frequent on their Twitter spaces, used to speak once every now and then. And it so happened that one of my old digital marketing acquaintances also follows me on Twitter. You might know of him, Naveen Mirchandani. He also helped a lot of Web3 startups scale up, build, mint, and do a bunch of things. He works with his own, he has his own influencer network and content creation for Web3. So he kind of spotted me on one of these spaces, and he had a couple of clients, and he said, you know what, Srini, you know digital marketing very well, you know Web3 very well. Why don't you talk to my friends? And I'll get you connected. And you know what? I was like, okay, cool, nothing. I'm excited, and I was in a phase where I'm open to kind of moving at that point. I spent enough time in the digital marketing space. So yeah, that happened, and I kind of met the lovely founders of Push Protocol, which is now, earlier it was EPNS, now it's Push Protocol, Harsh and Richa, and I believe Trikon has also done some collaboration, and we've seen some posts on LinkedIn where they met, I believe in Bangalore. But yeah, I got an opportunity to work with Push Protocol because, of course, I met them first. They kind of, asked me about what I wanted to do, and I was interested in both the spaces because I knew content marketing in the digital space, and I also knew the Web3 space. Kind of worked on a quick fire assignment, a PR assignment, which kind of helped them push their brand awareness, especially after their $10 million Series A funding that happened, which had a huge valuation of 131 million. So that kind of helped in terms of establishing my Web3 marketing sort of role. In fact, afterwards also I worked across events, hackathons across ETH Amsterdam, ETH New York, NFT NYC, ETH Dubai, many such events handling the web and the community. latching on to Discord. Even though Discord I've used much before getting into Web3 because I was fond of gaming and esports. I think I collaborated with a lot of people during my stint at Push Protocol, and that was my official, Web3 stint in a sense, and it was a great experience, of course. While in the last year I've been a little on the low key profile due to some personal family commitments. Today I feel so great to be back onto this Twitter space, back into the Web3, interacting with the community, and I'm really hoping this session kind of I'm able to share my knowledge and you guys enjoy listening to it. Yeah, so that's about me and my Web3 experience so far.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And the one thing that kind of stood out for me is in the beginning you said you ran a gaming cafe when you were 19 years old, so that kind of really stood out. So
Hmm.
starting gaming cafe at that young age and being seen through it all, uh, and kind of go through all the phases of an industry at that from maybe 2, 3, 20, 20 years back. So
Yeah.
So I want to know because each industry has its own eras, right? Even gaming has its own era. So I want to first start off with, as you have seen through it all, what were the parts that stood out the most, and where does Web3 gaming rank among them?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it feels nostalgic, but I still remember it as if it was yesterday. For sure. I mean, I of course managed the gaming cafe. A funny incident: the gaming cafe that I was managing wasn't even a gaming cafe. It was just an internet cafe, cyber cafe, where users used to come and spend an hour or at max 2 hours, and they used to go. Like okay, they're gone, but one behavior, me as a gamer, I knew if you get hooked onto a game, you will spend hours and hours and hours. So I told my friend who was actually the owner of that cafe that, hey, you know what are you doing running an internet cafe? Let's just run a gaming cafe. You'll get people in who will spend hours and hours and hours and they will not even leave. That means more revenue. That sort of was a little bit of business acumen of mine, but I just wanted myself to also play more games there. So I sort of told him, you know what, hey, let's run a gaming cafe so I could also get to play games. But anyways, I think gaming has definitely evolved over decades. I've seen a ton of them. In fact, I don't know how many of you have actually played a game on a cathode ray monitor or CRT. The ones which were black and white, which looked like old television sets. That was my first gaming experience. A 2D game called Prince of Persia, which are very funny music, and you do a sword fight. It was on an Intel 586 processor. That's okay. I'm a boomer, yeah, I agree, but that's how old the gaming ecosystem was, and yeah, I mean, even today you must have seen movies on Apple TV like Tetris. We played them. Pong was actually a very good impact on the gaming space for sure, and Space Invaders as well. So while growing up, having played these games and becoming involved in the era of 3D games, story-based games like Half-Life, Max Payne, then came the strategy games like Dota 2, Age of Empires, World of Warcraft. All of these games had a lot of things that kept on evolving, changing throughout. In fact, as the medium of communication and technology evolved, communication itself within the gaming ecosystem became far more evolutionary. Why we are in the Web3 space is because the web or the internet is so interactive, immersive, and that is what has changed from a Web 1 or a Web 2, where earlier you just had websites where you could read content of. Web 2 was more about social community, and Web 3 is where we are taking controls with DAOs and whatnot, right? So one of the key things, of course, having played so many games, including the games which I like, which is FPS, Counter Strike, and Valorant, where 5v5 gaming is there. And last but not least, immersive experience with a metaverse like was very much prevalent with the game called GTA, right? You must have seen Grand Theft Auto and the trailer recently, and also Fortnite for that matter. What I've seen that has stood out or that has changed or evolved over all of these eras of gaming is, initially when people used to play games, even if you call it like simply playing a game, if you've seen Stranger Things, in playing game on a pinball or inside a gaming arcade, it's all about, what, hey, I am bored of my life now, I'm tired of doing my 9 to 5 job, or I am actually tired of studying, let me blow off some steam and go play a game. Gaming has been escapism for all these years. But now what has happened is gaming has evolved over these years from being an escapist mode to being realistic. Like, in gaming, escapism is now turning into a realism where a Web 2 style non-interactive world has changed into a Web 3 or even more futuristic future web evolution, where in Web 3 gaming you can actually, due to the interoperability, you can own your own characters, your own apparel, your own shoes, glares, weapons, skins, all of these things. In fact, you have your own avatar in Decentraland, Sandbox, or any blockchain game that you play. So trying to escape into a new world of our own, creating our own world is very much, I'm sure you might have seen Inception, right? People, there's one scene where people actually go and sleep for hours to experience years in the dream world. So people are still trying to escape into another world where that world becomes their reality. Gaming is giving that option now, especially with AR and VR coming into picture. But even without AR and VR, what gaming across the world is doing, that it's connecting people with different parts of the world, especially because everyone follows a universal language. Like, you might speak different languages in France. You might speak French. In Chinese countries or countries following Chinese language, you will speak different languages. But if you're following the same game, all gamers have the same language and the terminologies of the game. They are always aware of it. In fact, just this last weekend, I was in Bangalore. I happened to meet so many awesome players of the Valorant game who are global, across the world. They have boot camps. And we connected instantly because we knew how the game was. I even happened to go to Istanbul last year to attend a Champions tournament of Valorant. There as well, I connected with so many creators, hosts, as well as casters and gamers, and I could instantly connect with them just by, I was wearing these fancy T-shirts which were part of that game, and they realized that, and they'd be like, "Hey, nice T-shirt. This brimstone outfit looks good on you," so on and so forth. So that kind of connectivity happens when you meet in a physical world. Similarly, I think Web3 gaming or the metaverse is now connecting people in game, which actually defines or even goes beyond the boundaries that we speak. And I think that is one thing that is high ranked. I think Web3 gaming is quite highly ranked because of this. Although I do feel it is in the nascent stage, just like how internet was invented in the 80s. Today we see so much of evolution of the internet, Web3 being part of it. I feel there is further depth that Web3 will go into, where games will be more user friendly, user interactivity will be easier, devices will be far more seamless as compared to the heavy, bulky Quest headsets that you wear. If you are doing AR and metaverse access is through that. So I think Web3 gaming, while of course a lot of it became popular because of P2E, ranking wise, I'm a big fan of Web2 games, but I think Web3 gaming gives you control, and it isn't like, I do not personally think it's too far out where you actually see a world like Ready Player One, or if you watch The Matrix, that kind of world is definitely bound to happen a few decades. I mean, sooner than that. I don't know. With so many glasswares and meta glasses and Apple launching its own glasses, and there could be so many things that could actually advance this technology. I don't know if you've seen the TV series on Amazon called Peripheral. That exactly defines that. You just put on a headset and you are transported into that world, just like in the Matrix or Johnny Quest, so that for that matter. So I think Web3 gaming does definitely ranks high, uh, but I feel there is a lot more opportunity to grow. And I would say, to be very honest, the whole world of Web3, or Ethereum, so to speak, has to give its due credit to the gaming in the Web2 space inadvertently. Like, even though it was a bad thing that happened, I don't know how many of you have heard of this, and I'm sure a lot of you guys who've known the Ethereum story and Vitalik's story. If it wouldn't be for the world of Warcraft developers and their shoddy centralized services that irritated Vitalik, he wouldn't have actually developed or launched Ethereum. I mean, in a hypothetical way, if you ask me, what World of Warcraft is something which he played from 2007, I think, to 2010. And it was right around that time when Blizzard, the gaming company, nerfed his favorite Warlock Siphon lifespell, and he got so irritated that he got curious about Bitcoin, read the paper, understood crypto, and in 2015, of course, he launched Ethereum. And if you ask me, Web3 gaming world or NFT world, metaverse is all a foundation of all of that is the ether that we talk about. I mean, so I think definitely it's there on the higher ranks for sure, and there's a lot of evolution that's ready to happen. I'm sure, you will see a complete different world pretty soon. Ready Player One, of course, is one of the realities. I'm hoping that it will happen. Of course, minus the devastation and scrappy real world that we live in. I mean, with all the wars happening nowadays, I think I don't want that kind of phase. But otherwise, I think Web3 gaming has a lot of potential to even grow further, and there's a huge, huge road and faster adoption to happen for us. Yeah.
100%. I think we have seen like very big improvement over the last couple of years, and now we have some really great studios in here, and we expect
Yeah, of course.
really good games have come out, and more too. So next year. So based on what you see right now, what do you think about some of these Web3 games that at least are catching a little traction and like
Hmm.
Parallel can be one of them. There are, I think there are really some of these
Yeah.
games. I wouldn't play them because it's not my something that I would like. But I know that there's a very big market for this, very big target audience for this. So I want to
Yeah.
know what are your thoughts on some of the Web3 games live right now, and some of the games you're looking forward to.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the blockchain gaming industry is slated to be huge in terms of revenues itself. It's exceeded $4.6 billion, and it's a valuation-wise $600 billion industry, so to speak. But I think the adoption of Web3 gaming, or for that matter, gaming as such, uh, through all the games that are being built, is happening already. The first breakthrough I would suggest and I would say is happening across growing countries and emerging economies, so to speak, like India, China, Indonesia, because of smartphones. That breakthrough has already happened when gaming became mobile. I mean, the biggest, easiest example in the Indian ecosystem is how big PUBG was as compared to PC gaming. And because it got banned, just like TikTok got banned, and then BGMI came back, it still has a huge, huge amount of following as compared to PC games. Simply because easily accessible, right? Every kid nowadays has a mobile game, and for whatever, for lack of better words, even if they use it as a pretext to having requirement of a fast or high-ended gaming, a high-ended gaming phone for, they might say, I want to do online classes or study. I've seen a lot of students actually getting those mobile phones because they say that, what, these phones are better in specs for my studies, and they, of course, inadvertently using them for their gaming needs and stuff like that. But mobile gaming is a big impact, whether it's Web 2, whether it's Web 3. I think building those games within the mobile ecosystem and launching them can see a lot more traction in terms of adoption. In fact, I remember having worked with Intel software in my early ages of digital marketing. We back then in 2010 we launched a game development contest called Level Up, where game developers from all over the country got an opportunity to kind of work on Unity, Unreal Engine, and these games. And the best games actually got, I mean, they were games for PC as well as back then smartphones, netbooks, and tablets were quite big. So they could actually come up with, iPad games or tablet games or PC games, flash games also to a certain extent. They kind of got these opportunities. And even then, we had realized that, mobile gaming is going to get big. We had a client called Visa, which is a mobile ad network. They definitely projected developers and ad spenders across Southeast Asia, a huge potential for growth in mobile industry. In fact, if you watch this TV series on Apple TV called Mythic Quest, if you want to get to into the behind the scenes of game development, that's kind of the TV series to watch. And multiple seasons they have, and they've really depicted it very well. Very similar to the Silicon. It's a comedy, of course. It's like a dramedy comedy kind of thing, but takes into account a lot of stuff that's happening in the game development space. So, like Silicon Valley of HBO was all about, it eventually ended up being one of the first sneak peeks of Web3 by their open internet reference. But all of these things are definitely Web3 as a gaming ecosystem is pointing towards growing markets. And if you've also noticed, developers, publishers, gaming companies are bullish on countries like India, China. China has its own restrictions, but even Tencent is huge and huge on gaming ecosystem. So is so many, you have now so many game development companies. I have companies in India like EA Sports, Ubisoft, you name it. I mean, and in the Web3 space, you of course have the YGGs and the IndieGGs also having presence because of the P2E gaming circuit. A lot of development is happening because of the social currency that these audiences bring to the table. And at the end of the day, everything is art imitating life. In Web3 or Web2, games are being so close to life. If you watch the recent trailer of GTA 6 by Rockstar Games, which by the way has, I think last I saw, was about 155 million views on YouTube. That game has references, or that trailer rather has references of real events that happened in Florida, because the game is actually going to be based in the city of Florida. For example, there is a guy pulling out an alligator from his swimming pool with a hose. There are bank robbers who are, entering the bank with an alligator in with them to kind of alarm the other people. Girls on top of Humvee, and all these are real life references. So art is always imitating life in gaming, and essentially, if you ask me from a long term standpoint, be it Web3 gaming, breakthrough in terms of adoption will happen when a lot of these, games bring in audiences because they have a loyal fan base, audience, attention. Social currency is taking on to the huge world. In the Web3 space, we all know how, because of Snoop Dogg, because of big names entering the Web3 space, it became huge in terms of adoption. Similarly, even in the gaming Web2 sports, there is huge adoption from people who are stars in the Web2 world. In fact, traditional sports, for that matter, they are getting into Web3 as well as getting into esports. All of that is bringing in a lot more adoption and driving these kind of things. So yeah, I think there's a lot more in the future potential for all of these gaming avenues.
100%. And now coming to esports, we've been saying it can be one of the biggest gaming sectors, and we have seen so much of growth, and whatever event related to esports, it's always packed. Fans are excited, and the whole scene is kind of thriving. But at the same time, uh, we've seen the last 2 years. I think at least I paid close attention in the last 2 years, where most of these organizations have been struggling. They have been not really profitable, and it has not been really sustainable, I would say.
Right.
So I want to know, like, what are your current thoughts on esports scene, and
Yeah.
the trajectory it's on, and
Right.
how do you think the improvements can be made to make it a sustainable business model?
Yeah, sure. I mean, absolutely. Esports industry is also fairly new. While traditional sports and all these traditional leagues like EPL have been existent for decades. IPL, of course, even IPL has been here for over 16, 17 years now. Esports, as such, of course, has been fairly new as compared to all these traditional sports ecosystems which existed in the world globally. Even sports in general existed much before the computer was even generated. So yes, while esports is lucrative, glamorous, you will of course have the after parties and the parties and prize pool money winnings and players demanding huge amount of salaries, infrastructure demanding a huge amount of revenue, currencies. And yes, there will be ups and downs just like any other industry. I mean, even startup industries have had their booms and they've had their failures. The Silicon Valley has had their fair share of up and downs as well. But to me, in an esports, the way esports is actually created is primarily and encouraged by publishers and game developers themselves. For instance, if you know League of Legends or Dota for that matter, if you haven't, definitely watch this movie called Free to Play. And it was essentially, it's a very old movie. Back then, when Dota announced, Dota 2, I think, announced, their first international TI. It's called international, and there have been 11 or 12 actually editions of it. So it's been running for over 12 years. When the first TI or the international was announced, they said we have a prize pool of $1 million. And that 12, 13 years ago was a huge amount. Reddit forums and people went crazy, berserk. And out of the 1 million, 1.4 million, I think, was the prize pool, and 1 million was the winning amount, if I'm not mistaken. But if you look at it that way, esports tournament was created to generate popularity so that non-gamers get hooked onto that game and audiences watch their favorite players play that game and then come on and latch on to the game. And then they in game you have merchandise, in game you have skins, in game you have to buy a lot of things. Sometimes some games are paid games, but primarily esports is an ecosystem which of course originally was generated to create popularity, build massive fan following, build loyal fan base. And then usually during Dota tournaments or the internationals, there used to be these battle passes that you come, not battle passes, but there are these terminologies that they use. But a lot of merchandise, sales, revenues, all of these things are part of the business model, which is already in place. All right, but that develops the revenue and stream for the publisher, right? Because the money that goes out goes into the kitty of the publisher. And yes, the publishers also make an effort, like Riot did a lot of times when they are playing champions. If you buy a champion's Vandal, some part of that particular revenue goes to the players and their teams as well. Now they are also coming up with team bundles where team will have a bundle of skins of weapons and whatever accessories you have which you can use. If I buy that, then a percentage of that will, or even large percentage of that will go to the team. So that kind of helps sustain their. There's a lot of investment in infrastructure, boot camps, investment in the player salaries, support staff, coaching. A lot of that has to be factored in. An esport game is not just a bunch of five friends coming together and playing. Even esports has mental coaches, just like you have traditional sports having mental coaches. Like Shaman, I knew of this guy who's doing mental coaching, performance coaching for the likes of South African cricket team, then Pink Panthers of the Kabaddi Pro Kabaddi League. So a lot of these things are also you are seeing into the esports industry. So there's a lot of cash burn happening, and esports owners are aware of it. A lot of times failures happen, or the downs, as you call it, in terms of layoffs or whatever that has happened, is because we are not able to project revenues. There are other forms of revenues as well. I worked with brands in my advertising space where advertisers themselves actually now looking for audiences. They want to tap into the esports space and they want to sponsor their brands. So brand sponsorship is again another thing. I'm wearing a jersey right now, Global Esports. They have an Intel, jersey sponsorship, which earns them a lot of revenue. So having these kind of avenues will definitely help esports companies, teams especially, and tournament organizers, of course, have their fair share of revenues. Where when you're playing in game, when the games are being played, they have sponsored by all of these brands. So there's a sponsorship money that comes in. So these kind of things are definitely sustainable ways, if done right, will help boost the ecosystem. While I think One of the teams that is doing really well and used to do well, even that team faced some challenges. 100 Thieves, 100 Thieves was known to be very popular because the kind of merchandise revenues they generated, and they had an ecosystem, short-term incentives for their own growth. Even they had to lay off people. So yes, there's ups and downs, but if you're thinking and planning just like you would plan for a normal business, if you have a like a proper workflow of a 3 year workflow, when you're going for a startup investment and you have a term sheet, if you're planning that way in a standard business model, I think that would help from a long term standpoint. If you're planning, it will definitely help, because at the end of the day, it's business, right? Don't treat it like how Amazon did in the beginning, where of course Amazon knew, Jeff Bezos knew the idea that he was building, and he did take on a huge amount of losses, but he invested in the technology to become who he is or who they are today, even though he's not part of the ecosystem. So I think a lot of it has to do with how you deal with your sponsorship, how you create avenues for revenues. Streaming, for that matter, is its own avenue. Streamers are getting millions of dollars by streaming on Twitch. How to know and how to do it, brand endorsements, influencer endorsements, all of these things are avenues that esports creators are already doing, but very few are actually doing it well. And I think doing it for the longest period and planning for the long term will definitely become a great thing, and not just treating esports as a passion, treat it as a business. That will help growth. In fact, as we were speaking just about an hour ago, one other thing that of course helps esports grow is having investors having interest from the traditional sports or the traditional world. For example, there's Messi, there's Beckham, Neymar is big in the CS community, and just about an hour ago, I saw a tweet which said that a football club FC Barcelona is going to participate in and host a team in Valorant Challengers. So imagine that interest is definitely there from the Web2 space or people who in the traditional conventional sports space. It's just a matter of how you are able to have a long-term sustainability model through brand endorsements, the same way they would be in an EPL or an IPL. I think that would help you go long-term, in this space also.
100%. I think one of the things, right, like it's kind of that kind of economy we are having, creator economy, where
Hmm.
previously if you ask what they want to become, they'll say engineer, doctor, something like that. And now everyone wants to be a
YouTuber.
YouTuber, a vlogger, a gamer. So I think that kind of shift is kind of quite exciting, because even though the probabilities are against them and the odds are against them, I think that shift is kind of quite bullish. And we also see that creator economy growing, and at the same time, uh, if whatever is built on top of blockchain tech and which empowers, ownership and stuff like that, it only benefits, creators like streamers and even esports players.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so my next question is regarding that only, where how do you see Web3 and whatever everything it brings help esports organizations, or how can someone leverage or tap into these new technologies to benefit them or make their,
Right.
not kind of redefine anything, but just kind of improve, make it more efficient, make it more transparent. So how do you
Yeah.
see kind of the both of them playing out?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, if I got your question right, how integration of blockchain and Web3 technologies into esports, how will that benefit the esports industry, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
Yeah,
100%.
sure. So yeah, I mean, I think I spoke a bit about it earlier as well. There are two sides of it, two facets of it. One is, of course, blockchain tech being transparent and on the chain, and publicly available, so to speak, on the public ledger, which means those are certain things which you couldn't do on the Web2 space. The other aspect of it, which I also spoke of, was in an esports ecosystem, interoperable gaming assets which solely belong to you is not possible in Web 2, which is possible in Web 3. So teams that are esports teams can actually publish stuff which is easily available, accessible, flaunt, and you can, if it's a Web 3 integrated game, you could actually use the skins, the same skins. I mean, right now it's like, the esports is popular because, of course, they want to popularize the game. But in the future, I think it's also because you want to also give ownership to the community. And I think there are the creators of Apex Legends. They are also popular and in the Web3 space. In fact, if you ask me, they've also got a DAO, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the things that they say is their DAO actually represents esports for culture. So, from a standpoint of technology and blockchain bringing in that aspect, it's always great to have a huge community. In fact, like I mentioned, I latched on to Discord much before I got onto Web3. Discord may not necessarily be a Web3 exclusive tech, but that's a technology which is popularly used amongst Web3 founders, Web3 creators, Web3, project members, as well as NFT owners and whatnot. But it's also a great way to kind of interact with the founders, with the teams, get on a VC, get on a space, or not space necessarily, but in a voice chat on Discord. These are certain technologies which essentially weren't easily available or accessible before Web3 came into, like, Web3 popularized it, in my opinion. So blockchain and Web3, even gaming, helps, reducing the distance between communities. And the DAO is a great democratic way or decentralized way to kind of approaching, how you want to take things forward. And if it should, of course, it's not so easy. We've tried, we've done a lot of stuff governance wise, and most projects have a chance to build, even for that matter, if you go to all these ETH NYCs, all ETH global events, you will see people who don't know each other meet up at these events, either online, offline, and they crack amazing product or a project together, and it becomes highly funded. Gitcoin grants are given to them, and so on and so forth. So blockchain is able to do that. Crowdsourcing, funding, all of these aspects could also revolve and come into the esports side of things, and that has happened, and I've been part of those kind of things. So that way, I think making esports teams and esports organizations self-reliant is definitely where blockchain technology will help. And as a matter of fact, Bitcoin in itself is a true testament to decentralization as such. And of course, I may not be a Bitcoin maxi, but until the halving I am. So I kind of definitely appreciate how that was like a pedestal to kind of becoming a great opportunity for having transparency, and all of these assets that you find in the blockchain Web3 space are very much implementable in, and they're done in a way through various channels in the Web2 esports industry as well.
100%. And we talked about the creator economy before. So on that, like one of the things that always fascinated me, and when I was kind of sitting back and analyzing, is like how much influence on our decisions is being driven by creators, people who are streamers. Like for example, if I want to start playing a game, the first thing I would usually do is just go check. Like one of my favorite game YouTuber is Rad Brad. So I
Hmm.
just go see what is the new game he's playing, right? I just go and see if that interests me in the next, like just watch quick gameplay or something and see if it's interesting or not, and I just go play that same thing. So it's kind
Right.
of so I think if for me I'm not a hardcore gamer, but I play every now and then, and most people are like that, right? So if it happens with me, so I think it happens with so many other people. So I want to ask, how do we get these people to kind of embrace this new shift in gaming? And what do you think it would take for them to because the perception right now is that everything is a scam, everything is this, everything is, because of how it was portrayed, even though it's not true, right? So how do we get these top streamers, top,
Right.
uh, like, for example, if Shroud, every like Shroud, he's a
Hmm.
big gamer, right? So the next new game he plays kind of really gets traction. Whatever it is a new hot thing, and that kind of
Right.
that game can drive attention, and you know what happens next. So how do we
Right.
get these really top in not influencers, but really hardcore gamers into your game and get them interested?
Yeah, I mean that's a valid point. In my opinion, I mean, Radbrad, I think he's popular and very popularly known as the king of YouTube walkthrough. So I think every gamer or a content creator or a streamer will have his own personality that is built, and that's how he or she will gain that following. There's Pokemon, there's Valkyrie in the female streamers, and there's Shroud, there's Radbrad, there's Tarek, who's very popular across Europe as well as Americas, and gamers also who are popular in different games. And yes, we've had the kind of flip side of it also, where popular personalities have spoken, about a certain, a project or a company, and then that company kind of went down the drain, and then those influencers or the content creators lost their credibility, so to speak, and then everybody started calling. Mold is a good example of that. What happened, in the Indian circuit, so to speak, or globally also. Yes, there is some level of uncertainty in terms of newer things involved, and there should definitely be certain guidelines. As a matter of fact, in my digital marketing space, we do work. My agencies that I've worked in have influencer outreach teams, and everybody in that space, in the Web2 space, there is a regulatory body defined by advertising, it's called ASCII, and they create guidelines from time to time so that, the influencers or agencies or marketers or brands don't violate those. So definitely there should be a framework in place in the Web3 ecosystem because it is so fairly new, because trust is essentially easily bought off. I mean, I don't know if you guys read the book called, Michael Lewis's latest book on SBF, right? That Going Infinite, I think that book exactly defines how SBF actually got so many big players, including Kevin O'Leary, Shaq O'Neal, so many big players. He just threw money at them and got them to kind of build credibility of FTX. And then, of course, when FTX went down, while the influencers definitely don't lose so many credibility points, a lot of people lost their money in the exchanges. So yes, that is a problem. But in the gaming and Web3 ecosystem, I think how it can be tackled is very, interestingly, it's also to do with, uh, you know, to prevent, especially from a rug pull, is also to do with giving control to the community in the sense of how you build a DAO around, having the tokenomics in place. That helps a lot of times with any project for that matter. Of course, ups and downs will always be there because crypto itself is a volatile market. But a lot of stuff that happens on the ledger, tokenomics helps. There are, tokenomics is a great way of transparency. Then there is also in terms of, a lot of projects have spaces and push. We used to have this push call. Basically, we used to keep our members updated about what's happening in the industry. There's a lot of communication happening through emailers, Substacks, and through Twitter Spaces every now and then. And of course, giving ownership to the community, and that I think will build a lot more credibility. Super Team DAO does a lot of good stuff, I think, from what I've seen. In terms of building that development and that transparency. I think pushing them, in a direction where explaining, creating simplicity for them to understand how this ecosystem works will help you garner more audiences. Up until now, people, whenever the Web3 or I would say crypto and blockchain is high in its market value, people always keep coming. And when it's down, then everybody is quiet. Where what people don't know is the real building happens when the crypto market is in the red. A lot of developers, projects, and folks are actually building and doing some great work, which they don't get their due notion. So, and of course, ethical marketing, which is also helpful. I think rather than just shilling, as we call it, if we are able to kind of create a roadmap, do communication through marketing efforts, which I did very much at Push Protocol, that helps a lot in terms of making things easier and people to get things adapted onto the space.
100%. And one more thing that I wanted to ask is Web3 is like very, very good at having community coordination and being able to do certain things even though uh, there is no real connection and being people coordinate like you be it in the form of a DAO or simply any community. And one of the examples that I saw recently, I think 1 or 2 months back, is like a group of people came together and formed a esports DAO called Black Hand, I believe. Yeah.
Hmm.
So
It's
and it
actually
was
the I mean, not owner, but they are associated with Apex Legends. It's a game. It's a,
yeah. And it was, I think it was supported by one other DAO called Nouns DAO. They were funding it in some way, I guess. So
right,
it was
right.
really cool to see them. Like they went in, I think they stood third in a competition, and it was
Hmm.
really affirming that how the group of people came together and they got support from the community, and they were competing in these competitions where the entry barriers are really high and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So how do you
Yeah.
see that kind of play out? And we did different competitions. We also had Dookie Dash
Yes.
from
Yes.
Yuga Labs that attracted a ton of
Mhm.
attention because the prize money was huge. So
Absolutely.
how do you see this kind of uh, you know DAOs and NFTs? How do you think those can be integrated?
Yeah, I mean, they have been happening for the longest time. In fact, my first time when I got interested in NFTs, I bought a couple of Z runs. No, not so expensive ones, but the Z
Yeah,
that
the
I
horse
used to
racing
watch.
game, right?
Yeah. So if you see on my OpenSea profile, you'll find a couple of Z runs. One is a nice dark black beauty, and one's a white one. But I was just experimenting and whatever was cheap and available, so to speak, I bought them. But the interesting part about what Dookie Dash did now is what Zedrun did long time back, but it was not promoted that well, and it was not a big project, as big a project as what Board Apes is and Yuga Labs is, of course. One of the key things, to answer both of your questions, I think. The community, be it the community coordination or be it generating more interest of people, firstly understanding how NFTs work or how all of these become integrated into the Web3 gaming, blockchain gaming ecosystem. One of them is simplicity. Just the other day, I think I tweeted to the foundership HQ founder Santosh P. He asked a simple question similar to this line, and it's about creating simplicity and educating new users, which they are doing very well, by the way. I think I've heard that for sure, and I'm yet to see. Product House does a good job on doing that. You know, uh, Educating new users, educating people, and helping them understand the safeties, the protocols, the things that you should do, shouldn't do. Simplicity is the key, of course, of creating whether it is content, whether it is streams, whether it is products, whether it is projects. Considering everything in Web3 and blockchain is high tech, even though I've met far geekier and nerdier folks in gaming and esports, they have a challenge understanding stuff, in the Web3 space. And at the same time, I've met people who are not so much into the Web3 space or the gaming space and esports space. They understand the Web3 ecosystem so well or DeFi so well that they've dabbled at their own, creating their own DeFi exchanges and raking in millions and millions and or even hundreds of thousands at least. And one of the key things, of course, we noticed because of simplicity is one thing. The other thing is accessibility. The biggest challenge we saw earlier on with Axie Infinity is Axies. You needed to have to buy them. You need some Axies, and you had a Ronin wallet, and that's when kids or whoever were good at the game, could be good at the game, didn't really have the money. they were funded by scholarships, and they had their houses, which kind of made them the actually scholars making money, and then those got a cut out of it. So that same thing happens in boot camps and ecosystems where they, of course, the gamers get paid salaries. Here, these guys are actually making their own money, and they give a cut of their earnings through P2E gaming to the houses, the guilds that they are building. But one needs to understand that the prize money or the P2E earning, all of these kind of things are secondary. If you think of it, either it is commissions related or scholarships related. If you think of it long term, you have to treat it as, what are you going to do in the long run to build a career out of this, right? If you want to be in the Web3 space, if you want to be in the ecosystem. So, to answer your question, this interest will only happen when creators, when houses, when teams, when people are investing in educating and making content simpler. Whiteboard crypto is a great way of doing stuff where we understand that, and Bankless is also good podcast, which help me understand simple things, concepts, and all of these things. There are definitely companies like Product House are doing stuff. I think I also want to be part of that ecosystem, and I want to build something where, or at least be part, because I love speaking, I love training, and I know this knowledge. I think the more people are able to get access to simpler formats of education, I think, say in the 5 to 7 years from now, I would say a lot of stuff that happens in the Web3 space will sort of immerse itself with how things happen in the Web2 space as well. In fact, in the Web2 space, Valorant has opened up concepts like Premier League, which is similar to a guild of sorts, where just ordinary gamers who are not professional esports players, they can build their own team and then eventually get an option to be part of the larger championships and whatnot. Because they have easy access to kind of do all of these things. So I think it is definitely all of these efforts will drive more players, more people, more participants in the ecosystem.
Absolutely. And before we wrap up, one of the things that I am really interested to know your thoughts about is that where do you see and what is the new thing that you see coming to esports? Because I feel that the experiences for the fan will get more immersive in the coming years, be it through where they can sit anywhere and tune into the
Mhm.
matches and feel like they're actually in the stadium or at the event. So, what new innovation do you see coming to esports? It can be even how Web3 can be integrated, metaverse, or whatever you feel is the next thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is happening to a certain extent. For example, Fortnite has its own esports. In fact, now Fortnite acquired a rocket launcher, Rocket Race, the game. So within the Fortnite ecosystem, they built another game and integrated it, so to speak. I think esports as such has garnered a lot of traction in terms of gaining audiences, creating loyal audiences, although not as huge as for the games of football or cricket, for that matter, or any other popular game that is across the world. We are definitely seeing blurred lines between traditional sports companies deep diving into esports companies. I think what things that can help become make esports more immersive and accessible is of course, we saw a lot of this shift happening because of the pandemic, because we were closed in four walls and a lot of audiences. In fact, at that time, I think I saw some documentary where esports producers, camera operators, observers, and whatnot shifted, rather, traditional sports, NFL producers, they shifted to esports and gaming way back when League of Legends was popularizing. So, a lot of people also started watching esports because live audiences weren't there. Although I do not suggest that we should have another pandemic for more integration of build of esports, but I would suggest a lot of these things happened because the audience definitely knew what they wanted to watch. They had the platform, they had the access. What is required, of course, is governments, as well as more tournament organizers. In fact, in India, we have recently seen OTT platforms broadcasting esports events. We, as a matter of fact, for PUBG or rather BGMI, saw a television channel broadcasting. Star Sports actually broadcasted BGMI's first championship, which Global Esports won, by the way. They kind of showcased it on a television platform. So broadening the audience through traditional medium is a great way to build more impetus towards esports. And I think a decade or two later, that will definitely happen on for Web3 and blockchain gaming. Only platforms will be different. There is a huge possibility that TV as we see it or theaters as we see it will become obsolete, where all of this will kind of get immersed into metaverse platforms, or you may not even need to get out of your house to go to a theater or go to a sports event. You can actually get the same kind of experience. So tech, of course, does talking far, far out. But I think a lot of government support is definitely going to help with esports as well as with Web3 gaming in the future. Simple example being Commonwealth that happened. Indian team won a Dota 2 gold medal beating New Zealand. That was great, and they got great reception. But after which the esports body kind of did a lot of bad things where they were not allowed to kind of participate in so many other things. So there are a lot of these infrastructure issues that do happen. I'm talking just about India, but also if you see Olympics is going to host its own esports in a way. But that way they're garnering more audiences, also newer audiences. And just as cricket is announced as a game that could be played, that would be played in 2028 Olympics, Summer Olympics. Similarly, you have Olympics for esports where they have announced a bunch of games which you can play. So those kind of platform exposures will definitely help in building more popularity, I think. So larger picture is of course, Web3, blockchain, AI, AR, VR, all that will happen in the future. But infrastructure wise, government participation wise, all of these things will definitely help boost gaming ecosystem, so to speak.
Awesome. And one final word on Web3 gaming for you. What are you most looking forward to in next year?
Uh, well, I said this before. Web3 and blockchain gaming is quite early for sure. Uh, if it's more accessible through smartphones and mobile, nothing like it. But the larger picture is, I think, accessibility in terms of, I'm not just talking about P2E games, but even just experiencing interesting games on the blockchain through not having to, pay through the same currency. Like, for example, decentralized requires mana, or sandbox will require sand, and or everything is sort of tied back in to currency of sorts, or what do you call it, crypto of sorts. Earnings and all of those things are great, but I think a large part of Web3 gaming, the future I see it is how audience attention and social currencies becomes the big thing. The earnings and all will come for platforms, or creators or whoever. For example, Mr. Beast is a great example or a great business model where, of course, while he's very popular in the gaming communities, he's built he's a YouTuber, a content creator, and his own, uh, food products, and has his own revenue streams, whatnot. But all of that happened because of the kind of social currency he generated, audience he generated. All of that is very much possible with a Web3 ecosystem. Just simplifying user interface, I think, will help go the long way. Ultimately, it won't be far out that we'll be in a matrix-like environment where you can just integrate AI and learn kung fu in the minutes and play Mortal Kombat. And the final art of mastering the game is then getting immersive experience by just the press of a button. Like you have virtual glasses, or you might actually enter. I think I'm waiting for that world. Even if I'm like 80-year old, I will want to play that kind of experience and become that kid in that particular gaming ecosystem, just like we are experiencing it in Fortnite or GTA nowadays. And of course, in the Web3 space, we are experiencing that with Decentraland, or for that matter, Sandbox. So yeah, that's my final word on the Web3 gaming ecosystem, so to speak.
100%. I think a lot of what you said we'll see go live in action next year. A lot of stuff is kind of getting better. And even we at Trikon, we are building product suites that make the whole
Right.
thing easier for onboarding, for developers and everyone involved. And I think a lot of we'll see next
Kudos to
year
you guys.
is, sorry,
Kudos to you guys. I think you're doing a great job.
100%. So I'm expecting big things next year. I think we'll have at least a couple of big breakthrough games that, a large part of the audience are really interested and will tune in irrespective of irrespective of the financial motivation or whatnot. And yeah, I think it's going to be a great year. And
Mhm.
thank you so much for coming on today. And also, I think you have a great YouTube channel. I kind of tuned into a few of your watch parties and check out what it's all
Yeah,
about
just
because I
fun.
haven't
That's just
been.
for fun. But thanks so much for inviting me, and thank you everybody for listening in and staying on till the end of the hour. So thank you so much.